Okay, so we made some assumptions about how people behave in these situations. So we looked at how predictions are made about people making decisions. Let me get the pointer up. We said people do certain things based on the information they possess and how they are complete and consistent with their internal evaluation of the action situation they are in, and after making this complete analysis of the situations, individuals choose an action in light of their resources to maximize expected material net benefits to themselves, given what they expect others to do. Given what they expect others to do. So there is this dependence that we always have to remember. Proceeding with this, then, we will call participants whose behavior can be predicted by these three assumptions rational egoists. When we study institutions, individuals in many situations do not meet the specific assumptions of rational choice theory. That's the main thing. To have a theory and you have lots of data that, let's say, confirms the theory, but then there are many situations where people don't necessarily fit into this theory. So the rational egoist might be a good starting point to predict human social economic behavior, but we know it cannot explain all observed behavior. So obviously when you are dealing with a real life situation, you may want to have some idea of what the null hypothesis should be on how people will behave. Unfortunately, there is not a widely accepted alternative theory as of now. Such a theory should include assumptions concerning the way that participants acquire, process, represent, retain, and use information. This is where some other details come in, like politicians acquiring, processing, and using the information to win elections, or defeat the other candidate, or insider tradings, and various other ways. So you know that not everybody has equal access in this sense. The valuation that participants assign to actions and outcomes, especially the outcomes that others experience. So your behavioral aspect includes outcomes that others experience. The processes, heuristics that participants use for selecting particular actions or strategic claims of actions in light of their resources. So we keep saying their resources. This can work in many ways. It could be country level resource and what it does to other neighbors, or it could be a corporation, hostile takeover, individuals with their resources and how they do choices. So we are not saying anything specific here, but considering we are talking about rational egoists, we are basically talking about players involved in social dilemma at the lab. So let's just stick to individuals at the moment. Okay, so given the many different assumptions that are involved in a more mature theory of human behavior, a more realistic theory would not be as simple, elegant, and decisive as rational choice theory. So it's a you have a nice idealistic theory that's not always valid, but reality may be much more complicated. Reality may be much more complicated. There are a couple of cleaning people making noise in the corridor. I have my window open because I need the breeze. I don't run the AC, even though I have a horrible allergy and the pollution is high. We must live in a certain way, right? There is increasing evidence that crucial elements in decision making a crucial element in decision making is the evaluation of the outcomes for the decision maker and others whom their decisions might affect. Many people value fairness and equity and prefer a more equal distribution of payoffs rather than maximizing their own earnings. So this is where this failure of the rational egoist model comes in, that Ayn Rand maybe wasn't that accurate anyway in her judgment of what people do and what is the best for people. Why people have these values is not clear. We don't know how this has evolved and whether it's a learned behavior or whether it's genetically imprinted or cultural and so on. An important factor is the social norms people acquire during their lifetime regarding what they are supposed to do. So obviously it's a learned behavior, it's a norm, it's not a rule. Not surprisingly, we find norms like do unto others as you would have them do unto you that serve as guiding principles in educating young people in how to behave in their interactions with others. Okay. As a non-native speaker, I have often trouble pronouncing V and W and young. It should be young, but sometimes I end up saying young. It's somehow wrong, and as I say it, I know it's wrong, and then I have to correct it. Okay, digression. So love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay, so this is not saying be altruistic. It's just saying don't do things to others that you wouldn't want them to do to you. This should be a simple guiding principle when you are involved in social dilemmas and, trust games, right? One of the main strategies that we find people use in conditional cooperation, people cooperate if others do so too. So this develops over repeated actions. This means that in repeated situations involving social dilemmas, people may adjust their decisions if they observe others are more or less cooperative than they had expected. One bad apple can spoil the whole bunch is a common saying that illustrates the principle that one persistent defector can trigger others to change to defection too. And obviously you can scale this up to businesses, people and businesses, countries, states, and so on. People have incomplete information and an incomplete understanding of the world around them. This is always true. Humans develop mental models, as a consequence of experiences and information they have received. As such, mental models are a product of experiences during childhood, the culture people come from, and the ability to process the information received through life experiences. In an action situation, participants have incomplete information but use their mental models to infer what others will do, what others will think about them, whether others can be trusted, and what the payoff matrix means for them. Communication may play an important role because communication enables people to share information to update the expectations they have about each other. Obviously, you can immediately keep extrapolating these theoretical words to real situations. If you move to a new place, do you begin to trust the traffic patterns, your driving behavior, your neighbors, everything, businesses in the neighborhood, and so on? Or you move to a different bank, different whatever, in many situations. What is clear from the empirical analysis of many social dilemma experiments is that there is not one method by which people make decisions. We can detect various strategies, and allowing for heterogeneity of strategies across individuals is crucial in explaining observations from experiments. If you are in a social dilemma with people you know very well, it's easier to judge what they will do and vice versa. Under these circumstances, it's more common that groups will cooperate. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's about the trust game and the rules of social dilemmas and how they play out in a lab. So we'll do some ultimatum and dictator games here to see. Maybe I should stop this here and do that in the next podcast, but this is only 8 minutes, so let me keep going a little bit more. Ultimatum and dictator games. We will now consider two other games that provide additional insights into how people make decisions in social dilemmas. Both games are called one-shot games, meaning that they are played for only one round. The first game is the ultimatum game, and the second game is called the dictator game. In the ultimatum game, there are two players who interact anonymously without communication, and only once. They interact only once and there is no communication. The first player receives a sum of money called the endowment and then has the following decision to make. Decide how to share the endowment you received between you and the other person. You don't communicate with the person, you don't know the person. It's important to know that there is no communication and the participants do not know each other's identity and will never know each other's identity. That should make a difference, right? The offer the first player makes to the second player can be accepted or declined by the second player. Okay? The big rule is here. If the second player declines the offer, both players receive nothing. So there is a criteria which motivates the first player to share something, because you make an offer, let's say, as little as possible? If the other player accepts, then you keep most of it. Or are you going to share as much as possible or equal without even worrying about whether the other person will reject it or not, and whether you will get something or not, and so on. If the second player accepts the offer, the endowment is divided the way the first player proposed. A very nice game, right? A common explanation of these empirical findings is that people evaluate aspects of the potential outcomes of their decisions other than monetary benefits, such as the relative distribution of benefits between the player herself and others. So this book is good. The authors are good. They say herself and not himself. Let's now consider the ultimatum and dictator game using the terminology of the action situation. So let's read this and then go to the next podcast. Participants, so two persons play the game. Positions, the two positions are participant 1 and 2. Actions are that participant 1 is given X at the beginning, the endowment. Participant 1 then takes a decision how much to keep and how much to offer to participant 2. In the ultimatum game, participant 2 can choose to decline the offer, which results in zero earning for both participants. In the dictator game, participant 2 does not make a decision. He keeps whatever he gets. This is very important because participant 1 knows that whatever he gives, the other person cannot reject, so he will keep whatever is remaining. In this situation, how much do people typically share? Do they give as little as possible, or do they come close to being equal in sharing? So this is a very nice problem, right? Outcomes, the potential outcomes are the different allocations of the endowment to the two persons in light of the decisions they have made. Action outcome linkages, the amount offered by participant 1 affects whether the participant 2 will accept the offer in the ultimatum game. I keep saying ultimatum. I don't know whether that's American. Ultimatum is American, I think. Whatever. I don't know why I kept saying ultimatum. It's wrong, right? In the dictator game, the amount offered by participant 1 affects only the final allocation. Information, both players are told the full tree of possibilities and that their own identity will remain anonymous to the other player. So even if you give as little as possible in the dictator game, you don't have to be ashamed because the other person doesn't know who you are, right? Potential payoffs. The payoffs are affected by the decision of participant 1, and in the ultimatum, oops, did I cut off something? I did cut off something. So let me just clarify that right away by looking at the, when I do these things, sometimes I am a little careless. So, ultimatum, dictator games. Yeah. So, let's see here. Potential payoffs. The payoffs are affected by the decisions of participant 1 and in the ultimatum game whether participant 2 will accept the offer or not. Okay, sorry about that. I'll go and correct the slide right now. I don't know why I screwed that up, but anyway, so see you in the next podcast. We'll look at certain details of these games that we discussed, but you are beginning to get the hang of it, what we mean by social dilemma and why we do it in the lab and try to look at the real world, because the real world is complicated with many confounding factors. So extracting the core of the human behavioral aspects is not always easy. But you can do idealized games and then see if there are analogs in the real world. That's the main goal as well. Okay, so we'll come back and continue the discussion.